Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at chapter 17 from the Road to Latin textbook. So this story is called In Peristylo. So like I always tell you, if you want to find more information about these stories, feel free to check out Nova Latin. You can find the story there, just the basic story if you're looking for an online version, or if you go to my textbook, you can see the story with different things added. So you can find the Latin, you can find translations, videos, notes, things like that. So it might help you to just see the story in a different way and understand the chapters a little bit better. Feel free to check it out. But either way, like I always tell you, before you dive into these stories, the first thing you want to do is make sure you have the vocab under control. So you can either do that on your own with flashcards or making a Quizlet, or you can just go to my site. I already have Quizlets there. You can use whatever you want, but make sure you know the words. It's really tricky when you start a new chapter and try to read something in Latin for the first time. If you don't know what the vocab is, it makes it very, very difficult. So always start there. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you have a good understanding of the new grammar, right? Each chapter and each story introduces a new, or emphasizes, I should say, a new element of Latin grammar. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that. And again, my site can help you. You can check out my notes. And we're going to do a short version of that in this video as well. And then the last thing you want to do is really practice your reading, right? So speaking and listening. So if you can find someone to read this story to you, that would be ideal, right? Have them read it to you so you can listen to the story and process it, and then read it back to them, right? To work on your speaking and pronunciation. Those all help with understanding how the language works. You don't want to just read this language in your mind without ever speaking it. Give it a shot. Try to speak it as much as you can. It will all help. So that's what I would recommend before you dive too far in. The other thing, too, is when you're reading it, you want to probably use what we call the read and reread method, which is where you start by reading it. You note any areas that you don't understand. Once you're done with the first read, kind of look it up and look up any words you didn't know, any vocab, grammar, anything that just kind of stumped you. Practice it and then read the story again. And the second time you do it, it should make a lot more sense. And if you need to keep doing that a second, a third, or fourth time, it's totally fine. The more you read it, every time it should get a little better. So always think of that as you go too. But like I said, we're going to start in this video with a quick overview of the grammar. So what chapter 17 is really hitting on is verbs. And the thing you want to understand are conjugations. So we've talked about Latin nouns and adjectives being organized into groups, which we call declensions. You can do the same thing with Latin verbs, except they're called conjugations. And again, this is more like a grammar term. It really just means groups, okay? And it has to do with the spelling. So the way you know what group a Latin verb belongs to is by looking at the infinitive. The infinitive is the second part of the verb if you were to look it up in a dictionary. So if that infinitive ends in an ARE, it's what we call first group or first conjugation. A long ERE makes it second. A short ERE, meaning the ERE has no long mark or macron over it, is third. And an IRE is fourth. So these are the four groups that we have for Latin verbs. And it actually makes Latin a little easier to kind of process. This is why people say Latin is sort of like a puzzle or has patterns. In English, all the verbs are spelled kind of at random. In Latin, though, they all are spelled really similarly, right? You can group them, and that's really what conjugations are doing. It's just a way of grouping verbs. So why do we do this? Well, you take the groups of verbs called conjugations, and you do a process called conjugating, which again, I know sounds a little bit grammar-y. It just means you're writing out the different forms of that verb, right? So verb conjugation is when you write out the different endings depending on who's doing the action. So it's how you say I, you, he, she, it, we, you, all, or they do something, right? In Latin, it's spelled a little bit differently depending on who's doing the action. So the process is pretty straightforward. When you're dealing with present tense, what we call active voice, the verb conjugation process is you go to the infinitive and you drop the RE. This gives you something called the present stem. Then, if you have a first or second conjugation verb, this is why knowing which group the verb belongs to is important. All you do is add the endings, OST, mustissa. And remember, O means I, S means you, T means he, she, or it. The MUS means we, the TIS means you all, and the NT means they, right, are doing something. So again, go to the infinitive, drop the RE to get what we call the present stem, and add your endings. For third and fourth conjugation, we do something really similar. You go to the infinitive, you drop the RE, but there's flipping of vowels involved. So when you're trying to really spell Latin verbs, third and fourth conjugation gets a little tricky because you're going to flip the E to an I and then to a U. So in other words, if you had a third conjugation verb, you're flipping some of the letters around, right? That E becomes an I. And when you want to say they do something with a third conjugation verb, it has to do with flipping that I to a U. and then you add the endings of ost, mustisan. Now, I know that's a little tricky, and you might not understand. If this is your first look at it, you're going to be like, Mr. C, what are you talking about? So this little overview of the grammar is just to remind you of what's already in the textbook. So this should not be your first look at the grammar. This is just to give you a refresher of hopefully what you've already learned in terms of the chapter 17 grammar. So I'd encourage you to go back and read through the actual grammar notes, and then this video should give you like a little bit of a refresher. But that's really what the grammar is all about. The other thing that gets included in Chapter 17's grammar is something called the imperative mood. Okay. Now, the imperative is used for commanding someone to do something. And you can actually hear it in English. When you make a command in English, it sounds different. So when you say run, jump, go away, right? That's different than saying I run or you run or they jump or we should go away, something like that. There's no person attached to it, right? It's because you're just generally commanding someone. So even in English, it sounds different. In Latin, it's definitely spelled differently. And the way you do it is you have to understand or think, are you giving what we call a positive or a negative imperative, meaning a positive command or a negative command? For a positive command, it means you're telling someone to do something. You can do it two ways. You either have a singular or a plural command. Singular, so in other words, a positive singular imperative means I'm telling one person to do something. For that, all you do is drop RE off the infinitive. So in other words, the present stem and our positive singular imperative are the exact same thing, right? Just drop the RE, and that is, add an exclamation point, you have a Latin command. For the plural, a plural positive imperative would be if I'm telling more than one person to do something. For that, I drop the RE and I add a TE, right? That's the only difference, okay? Now, you can also do negative commands. A negative imperative is when you're telling someone not to do something. So a singular negative imperative is when I'm telling one person to not do something. That is when we use noli, and then we put the infinitive after it. So it might be something like noli ambulare, which would mean don't walk. Okay. The plural negative is when I'm telling a group of people to not do something. So if I wanted to tell a bunch of people to not walk, I would say nolite plus the infinitive. So nolite ambulare would mean, hey, all of you, don't walk, right? And you can actually see in noli and nolite, it's following a similar process to positives. You're just adding a TE. So it kind of all works together. And again, this is just meant to be a refresher of what you've already seen. Don't let this be the first time you're looking at the grammar. If what I'm saying is completely new to you, go back and reread the chapter's grammar and look at a bunch of examples. That'll really help you out. But this is just a refresher to remind you of what you should be looking for in this story, because it is sort of the grammar for this chapter. So once you're there and you're in a good place, you feel pretty confident, in the grammar, the vocab, all that stuff, you're ready to read the story. And here it is. It starts with this. You have peristylum, liberos tuliae delectat. So the peristyle, and again, a peristyle, you can see in the picture I put to the right, it's sort of like a columned garden, if that makes sense, right? A colonnade sometimes is the word. Peri means around in Greek. The stylum part is a column, right? So columns all around is literally what a peristylum is. And it's talking about a garden with like a columned walkway around it. So the peristyle, it's kind of how we say it in English, delights the liberos tuliae, the children of Tulia, right? They like the peristyle garden. Then you have puellae statua saipe ornant. So the girls often, saipe, ornant, they decorate the statuas, the statues. And you can see in the picture, there'd be a bunch of different statues in your sort of garden with the columns around it. Then you have Aulus et Lucius ibi student. So Aulus and Lucius, they study here, right? Student, they kind of, practice their school here. Okay. Pueri parvi in peristylo libenter ludunt quod in peristylo est aqua. So the small boys, the pueri parvi, they happily or gladly, libenter, play, ludunt, right? They play in the peristyle, in peristylo, because, quote, right, there is water, est aqua, in peristylo, in the peristyle. So it's saying they like to play in the peristyle because there's water there, which would be true. You might have a little pool or a fountain, something, but often there'd be a water element in this sort of columned walkway around the garden, the peristyle, if that makes sense. Then you continue. You have pueri parvi, naviculas ligneas habet. So the little boys, the parvi pueri, they have habet. Naviculas ligneas means wooden ships. A navicula is like a little ship, like a toy ship, and ligneas means wooden. So these are accusative plural. So you're saying they have little wooden ships. It's kind of how you translate it. Tulia in peristylo saipe sede et ludos liberorum spectat. So Tullia, right, the mom, she often sits, Saipe said it, in Peristylo, in the peristyle, and she watches, spectat, the ludos, the games of her children, liberorum, of the children, right, of her children. So she likes to sit there and watch them playing with these wooden ships. Then you have interdum, Tullia cum liberis ludit. So sometimes, interdum, Tullia plays, ludit, right? She plays with the children, cum liberis. So she not only watches them, but sometimes she plays with them. Now, in this first paragraph, you want to pay attention to the verbs, right? Delectat, ornat, student. Look at the way they're spelled. This is coming back to the whole verb conjugation idea for present tense, which is the grammar of the chapter. So if you're confused on how I translated any of these verbs, go back and look at the grammar. That's really explaining what's going on. Then you continue. You have Hodie, Publius et Servius, Domi sunt sed Lucius et Aulus in ludo sunt. So today, Publius and Servius, these two boys, they are sunt domi, at home, right? But Lucius and Aulus, they are in ludo, in school. So Publius and Servius are little, so they're home. Lucius and Aulus, they're older, so they're off at school. Okay. Then you have a domicilio Tullia clama. Okay, so Tullia shouts from the house, right? From the domicile, a domicilio, from the house. And she shouts, ubi est publi, right? Where are you? So S means you are. So ubi est means where are you, right? Publi is the vocative, Publius, right? So she's calling one of the boys who's at home. Where are you, Publius? Quid agis? What are you doing, right? Publius respondet. So Publius responds, and he says, ludo in peristylo, Tullia. So ludo, I am playing in Peristylo, in the peristyle, Tullia. Kind of weird that he's calling the mom by her name, but that's fine, right? So he says, hey, Tullia, right? Hey, mom, I'm playing in the peristyle. Tum Tullia clama, right? So then Tullia shouts, ubi tu ludis, servi? So where are you playing? Tu ludis, right? Where are you playing? Serius, right? Servi is vocative. So she asks where the first boy is. He says, I'm playing in the garden. So now she asks for the second boy, Servius. Where are you playing? Okay. And he responds, this is ego quoque in peristylo ludo, respondet Servius. So I too, or I'm also, quoque, ludo, playing, right? Ego ludo means I'm playing too, or also, quoque, in peristylo, in the peristyle, responds Servius, okay? Num in aqua luditus, rogat Tullia. So here we have a yes or no question. The num means I'm asking one where I'm expecting the answer to be no, okay? So when she says num in aqua luditus, luditus with the TIS means you all. So she's saying you all are not playing in the water, in aqua, right? The num really means like you're saying right. So you can almost translate it as you're not playing in the water, right? Right? You're expecting the answer to be no. Rogat Tullia, Tullia asks. And then you get the response. In aqua non ludimus, sed naviculae nostrae sunt in aqua. So the boys respond and say, we are not playing, non ludimus, we're not playing in the water, but our ships, naviculae nostrae, right, our little ships, are in the water, sunt in aqua. So they're saying, we're not in the water, but our ships are. Naviculas ad Graeciam et ad Cretam mitimus, respondit pueri parvi. So the small boys respond, right? And this is kind of their whole answer. They said, we're not in the water, our ships are. They said, we're sending mitimus, right? Naviculas, the boats. So we're sending the little boats ad Graeciam, to Greece, and ad Cretam, to Crete. So they're pretending that they're sailing them across the Mediterranean Sea, right? So that's why they're saying, we're sending them to Greece and Crete, right? Respond the little boys. Then you have quid audis publi, quis venit. So what do you hear? Audis means you hear. Publi is vocative. So one of the boys is talking to the other. Servius is saying, what do you hear, Publius? Quis venit, who is coming? Subito rogat Servius. So suddenly Servius asks. So they hear something and they say, hey, what do you hear? Who's coming? Then you have the response. Lucius et Aulus in domicilium veniunt, respondet Publius. So Lucius and Aulus are coming, veniunt, into the house, in domicilium. Right? So they hear the two older brothers coming back from school. Respondet Publius means Publius responds. Then you have venitne paedagogus cum pueris publi. Then you have the response of pueri cum paedagogo veniunt. So venitne means or is he coming, right? The any means you're asking a yes or no question. So it says, is he coming, or is the paedagogus, the tutor, coming, cum pueris, with the boys, Publius. So he's saying, Publius says, yeah, Lucius and Aulus are coming. And then the next question from Servius is the tutor with them, right? Did the tutor come with the boys? And he responds with this, pueri cum paedagogo veniant. He says, the boys, veniant, are coming, cum paedagogo, with their teacher, their tutor, right? So it's not just Lucius and Aulus coming, but their tutor is with them too. And then you end the chapter, the story rather. You have cur Luci, aludo mature Venus, clamat Publius. So why Lucius, right? Luci is vocative. Are you coming, right? So again, they're talking directly to one of the boys. Why are you coming aludo from school, mature, early, right? So it's saying, why are you coming home early from school is really what he's asking. Clamat Publius, right? Publius shouts. And he gets his answer. Venio quod magister est aiger, respondet Lucius. So venio, I'm coming, right? Because the teacher, the magister, est aiger, is sick, right? So it says, why are you coming back from school? Well, I'm coming back because the teacher's sick, right? Is the idea. Respondet Lucius. Lucius responds. Then you have another question. None tu et Aulus in Peristylum venitus, clamat Servius. So again, the none means you're asking a yes or no question, where you're expecting the answer to be yes. So he's saying, surely you and Aulus, tu et Aulus, venitus, you are coming into the peristyle, in Peristylum. So it's almost like saying you're coming into the peristyle, right? Like you're going to come play with us. Servius shouts. The response is, in Peristylum non venimus, right? We are not coming, non venimus, in Peristylum, into the peristyle. Ad Tullium venimus, pueri responded. So we are coming, venimus, to Tullia, ad Tullium. Pueri responded. The boys respond. So the little boys are playing. They hear their older brothers coming back, and they say, hey, you're home from school. Why? Right? You get the answer, and they say, hey, are you going to come play with us in the peristyle? And the answer is no, right? They're not going to do that. So again, in this chapter, or in this story, the main thing you want to pay attention to are your verb endings, right? Look at how the verbs are spelled and really practice this, right? Think about how they spelled these. How did you get from the infinitive, for instance, venire to venitus? What happened there to say you're coming? How does venitus relate to venimus? How do those verb endings change the meaning? That's what this chapter is all about. So it's another good chance to kind of pause and really understand how we use our verb endings and how we spell verbs in Latin. So give it a shot, like I always tell you. Practice it, read the story. If you get stuck, again, note anywhere you're getting stuck. Try to fix those gaps and then read it again. If you keep reading it and keep practicing, it should make more and more sense. If you have any questions at all, put them in the comments below, but otherwise keep at it and good luck.